Think we're good to get started. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this live on ServiceNow event talking about digital product release. My name is Kalen Castillo. I'm one of the speakers today. We'll get into speaker intros in just a bit, but we have some housekeeping slides that I'm going to walk us through before we officially get started with the presentation. First is a safe harbor notice. This presentation may contain some forward-looking statements based on our best beliefs and assumptions at this point in time, but please know that there are uncertainties around forward-looking information. These things may change, so just don't take anything as locked in stone if it's forward-looking. Second is we want you to join us at more future webinars and 360 events. Today's session is a part of Live on ServiceNow. It's a curated event series to help connect you with ServiceNow experts and peers that can help you deploy your products and achieve value faster. So we hope you join us again at another webinar or 360 exchange. You can see the schedule by scanning this QR code right here, or please use the link that Greg will post in the chat. Maybe a minute in case you want to scan this. Maybe not a minute, 10 seconds. Okay, and final housekeeping slide. We do have time at the end of this session for Q&A. So I believe you aren't able to come off mute, but please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen in the Zoom to ask questions along the way. We'll be monitoring that, trying to aggregate common questions and answer those at the very end. This presentation will also be recorded. So if you want to share this with a colleague, you want to review it later, look to our ServiceNow community for this presentation. And after the event, we also are really looking forward to your feedback. So we'll be sending out a survey to get your feedback. Please look out for that and fill that out. Okay, so jumping into the agenda for today, I'm going to start with some speaker introductions of who you're going to be hearing from. Then we're going to talk about some context with the evolution of release governance. And from that, dive into digital product release, what it is, how it works. And then you'll see a demo from Joe for digital product release, and then we'll have Q&A. So for your speakers today, like I said, my name is Kalen Castillo. I'm an outbound product manager with ITSM. I've been at ServiceNow for about 2 years, and my primary focus is on our products that fall within our modern governance space. So that is our new release management product, digital product release, what we're talking about today, as well as DevOps change velocity. Joe, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm an outbound product manager as well in ITSM, and I focus on our DevOps solutions, DevOps change velocity, and now our digital product release. Looking forward to showing you the solution. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Joe. Greg, over to you.
Hey everyone, Greg Hollis. I'm also an outbound product manager with an ITSM, focusing on the same products, so our DevOps products as well as digital product release.
Great. All right. With that, let's jump into it. So when we speak to our customers, we see that many are in a state of flux when it comes to enterprise governance. It's becoming less common for IT to have a command and control forceful hand. And instead, we're seeing customers evolve to a more trust but verify form of governance where IT enables teams to do the planning, building, testing, deployment, and running their own applications and services more autonomously within the guardrails and visibility of IT. With this shift, customers have expressed the need to adapt and properly enable their growingly federated teams to maintain that digital contract with IT to drive resilience and compliance. Focusing on how this applies to release management specifically, the traditional method of release revolves around a project-based way of working. So if you take a look at the left side of this visual, you'll see applications and features are bundled together and released together as a part of a larger release package that's managed and validated by a central release team. As organizations modernize and adopt more agile DevOps practices, release has evolved from this traditional project-based way of working to a more product-based way of working. And in a product-based way of working, we see distributed autonomous teams doing the planning, building, testing, and deployment of products on a more iterative, frequent basis. This has a number of benefits very similar to what many of you may be familiar with from a DevOps perspective, where there's faster paces of releases, quicker feedback cycles, as well as an enhanced ability to pivot. But it also comes with its own set of challenges, particularly for IT, where it's becoming more difficult to have visibility into these discrete releases, and it's also harder to ensure compliance across all of these releases. So as a whole, we're seeing really shift away from this traditional project-based way of operating, and now we're observing central teams more focused on defining the right guardrails to enable product teams to get their work released in a compliant manner. When we speak to our customers, we also hear 4 key trends that represent the challenges around their release processes. The first is around a desire for more automation. As software products are becoming more complex, release validation, particularly if it's manual, and to be honest, it is often very manual, takes more and more time, so they want more automation. The second challenge is around a loss of visibility. This is the one I briefly discussed in the last slide. As organizations are digitally transforming and becoming more agile, adopting DevOps practices, we're seeing product development move into a discrete line of business teams, and IT is losing visibility into those releases. On the other side of the spectrum, the product teams themselves that are becoming more distributed without proper guardrails from IT are unsure when they're ready to release and how their work is measured. So this could lead to them releasing code that's not fully compliant, leading to issues down the line, or perhaps they're trying to figure out when they are ready to release, and that's actually delaying them in their release. The fourth challenge is around change becoming arduous. This is something that we've seen with actually a number of ServiceNow customers, is that because ServiceNow has not offered a truly capable release product up until digital product release, many customers have actually ended up augmenting their change management process to accommodate release. So this has made change very overloaded and arduous with a number of fields in their change forms to validate release readiness. From these challenges, we saw an opportunity, first and foremost, to fill the gap within our product portfolio for ITSM with a capable release product. This is digital product release. Release Management V2 was our legacy release product. It was essentially just a set of tables, but there was no real workflow on top of it. DPR is launching with full parity of that Release Management V2 product, and also has the most requested features we've heard from customers using Release Management V2 at GA. So it's going to have a great user experience. It'll have release templates that are reusable and configurable, and it will have the ability to connect to DevOps tooling. With digital product release, central IT can also gain end-to-end visibility into release readiness across the products they're being delivered. We're going to provide the ability to automate, leveraging policy checks using our policy as code engine to help validate compliance and ensure governance across products. And then for those release teams, we're going to help them understand when they're ready to release by applying reusable, centrally defined release templates that can apply release policies across phases to help those teams certify when they're ready to release. Okay, with that, we want to see how that context and problem statement resonated with you. So we're going to launch a quick poll. So great if you could help launch that poll. Great. So first question is around if you yourself are seeing that shift from a project to product-based release at your organization. Second question is around which of the challenges that we've highlighted have you experienced? Perhaps you've experienced all of them. Maybe you have experienced none. Maybe there's another change that you have experienced that we didn't call out. We'd love to know what that is. And the third question is around what you use today for your release process. We'll just give this another 15 to 20 seconds to get responses, and then we'll show you all what you said. A lot of great responses, so I'm going to end this poll and share it. So it looks like the vast majority of you have seen this shift or have already made this shift, about 80% of you. The challenges that we shared resonate with the vast majority of you. That's also great. And it looks like most folks on this call are actually using a very manual process to manage your release process. So hopefully as we introduce digital product release, it seems like a good solution that you would be interested in adopting. All right, so let's jump into what digital product release is. So our vision for digital product release is to be the release process orchestrator, and the key word there is process. That'll help enable product teams to consistently plan and deliver new versions of products by providing visibility into the release process and automating the validation of release readiness while incurring minimal overhead. DPR is designed to help organizations manage the process in which they ensure products are ready to deploy, but what it does not encompass is the capabilities to the actual development, testing, and deployment. So that's why it's really the release process orchestrator. We're going to spend a decent amount of time on this slide. This is really the slide that helps demonstrate and helps you understand how DPR works and how DPR impacts release. So just to reiterate, DPR does not encompass the capabilities to do the building, testing, or actual deployment of a product. What it does do is tie these different release phases together, in this example from planning through deployment, as a layer that validates when a product is ready to progress from one phase to the next. And we do that via policy checks. What policies are their data-driven validation checks that will happen automatically. They'll run on an hourly job that'll leverage data from both within ServiceNow and also third-party integrations. I like to think of policies as gates that will deem when a release is ready to progress from one phase to the next. Only once all policies tied to a particular phase are compliant can a product move to the next phase. In this visual, you'll also see a concept of tasks. Tasks are designed to be explicitly looked at or performed by a person. So think of them as manual checks or approvals needed to cover actions like gaining legal approval or getting design sign-off. We're not using tasks to determine if a product can progress from one phase to the next. That's only happening via policies. That said, there will be a policy that will check to see that all tasks are complete, and this could be associated to one, a few, or all phases. We actually anticipate most customers looking to adopt DPR initially will rely heavily on tasks across their phases to validate aspects of readiness, and then use these policies that validate task completion to progress forward through their releases. At the bottom of this visualization, you'll see many of the third-party CI/CD planning, orchestration, testing, security, and monitoring tools that can be leveraged with DPR in these policy checks. DPR is using the DevOps data model to integrate with these tools. This is the same data model that DevOps Change Velocity uses to integrate with tools, and we're fortunate to leverage all of the learnings and investments over time in that experience from DevOps Change for DPR, so it's a pretty good streamlined experience right off the bat. We do want to call out that DPR does not require DevOps Change to actually use, but we actually see DPR as the more likely entry point for most customers to be introduced to the DevOps data model. So you can begin integrating with your CI/CD tools, getting that data into ServiceNow, and then leveraging it across your workflows. So to summarize how this works one more time in the way that I like to think about it is traditionally what customers have done is just before they deploy code to production, they have a change request that'll be very long. It'll have a number of change fields, custom fields that'll validate release readiness across a variety of aspects. And if anything was found wrong in that change form, it would kind of be a struggle or a fire drill to figure out what went wrong, when it went wrong, and you have to contact a lot of teams, and that change would be open for a pretty extended amount of time. What we want to do with digital product releases, we want to take all those custom validations that are happening as a part of that change request and instead shift them left so that they occur in the phases that they actually happen, so that the validation is happening throughout the release. And then by the time you progress to that release and you get to the point where you're creating the change, instead of a very long custom change form, you'll have a change form that will reference digital product release to see if this release is compliant. If it is compliant, then that change is relatively simple to view, approve, and then implement so you can deploy that code to production. So that is how we view digital product release working, impacting release, and also potentially simplifying your change process. So to recap,
a question about the DPR works alongside existing change processes.
It does, yeah. So was there more to that question?
Just how does it work?
How does it work? Well, we see DPR as a if you leverage change models, you can actually create custom change models that will work with DPR as well. But we see DPR as an opportunity to actually simplify most folks' existing change models, because typically what we've seen is a lot of customers have they've made change kind of do a lot more than it was intended to do. And a lot of the release validations that should happen throughout a release are happening in a change. So DPR can help pull out a lot of those validations to happen throughout a release so that you can actually simplify your change process. Hopefully that helps. All right. So we're about to the demo. Just got a few additional slides here. So to recap, digital product release is ITSM's new modern release solution that'll help enable product teams to plan and deliver new products consistently with low overhead guardrails defined by IT. So these are our release templates and policies. And DPR is going to help provide the benefits of governance while limiting the headaches that it often incurs on teams. One of the key pieces of information that I haven't yet mentioned is how DPR is licensed. DPR is going to be included as a part of our ITSM Pro package. So if you have a SKU with ITSM Pro or Enterprise, you'll be able to download and use DPR today. One other important note is that the minimum patch version you'll need to run DPR is Vancouver patch 5. So for those who are on Vancouver or planning to upgrade to Vancouver, you'll be able to use DPR, even though it's launched as a part of Washington. Before we jump to the demo, I did want to share some customer validation proof points that we've observed for DPR. The theme of the 2 quotes you see here is that DPR solved an acknowledged need for these customers that they were planning to build custom themselves, and instead they can leverage and use DPR and then also benefit from our continued investment in the product. When we built DPR, we engaged closely with a number of design partner program customers to co-develop DPR. And from these customers, the majority of them actually were quite aligned with our MVP that launched with Washington. And of those, several are already on their implementation journey. The remainder that weren't aligned to our MVP are aligned to scope on our roadmap and intend to implement DPR when those features are released. So the key takeaway is that DPR is solving the need of many of the customers that we work closely with. We listen to their feedback to co-develop it with them. And then we have a lot of key enhancements planned over the next several releases to keep building the capabilities of DPR so that these customers can grow with it and use it. All right, final slide before the demo. In the upcoming demo, you'll see a narrative that focuses more on the release execution from a product manager and release coordinator persona. So this will represent more of what day-to-day users of DPR would do when it's up and running. Not a core focus of this demo will be the setup experience that our teams put a lot of time and focus into streamlining at GA when we launch DPR. So we want customers to get to first value quickly with DPR. As you can see in the screenshot here, DPR is launching with a guided setup experience that'll help walk admins through how to define the release process, when releases should happen, and connecting to external tools in DPR. Additionally, we're launching with a number of out-of-the-box policies that customers can use to automate their release compliance and readiness checks. So with that, Joe, I'm going to hand it over to you for the demo.
Great. Were you going to bring up that slide to show the personas?
Yeah, right here.
Okay, fantastic. So what we're going to take you through is a demonstration of first how a release manager like Andrew, or a program manager, or perhaps somebody responsible for the governance of releases, will be able to create templates that ensure certain tasks and policies are followed. This is to make sure that we have centralized governance over the release process, still allowing autonomous teams to manage the releases themselves, but to ensure that certain things get done. For example, we want to make sure there's a task that ensures a security scan is done for certain types of applications. That would be Andrew's responsibility to put that task in the release template, okay? Eileen, on the other hand, is a product manager or a product owner, okay? She's responsible for, one, prioritizing features of the release. So I'm going to show you how we do that, as well as tracking the execution of the release and making sure all those tasks get done. And then we have an engineer who's not logging into ServiceNow at all, is remaining in her own tools. In this case, I'm going to show you in GitHub and GitHub Actions how she's creating enhancements and bug fixes and so on, and then driving improvements to the product itself. And while that's happening, in a passive way, we are capturing that data in ServiceNow to help us track different aspects of the release. So we'll take you through that. Okay. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here. All right, so what you're looking at here is our digital product release dashboard. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and impersonate Andrew, who is our release admin responsible for the governance of the release. And what Andrew's primary job is to make sure that there are templates that are applicable and available to all the different product teams, okay? And make sure that those templates contain proper phasing and tasks and policies to ensure that the release not only happens in an expeditious way, but make sure it's compliant with all the policies that are required. So if we look at what a release template provides, we're going to see first phases are defined. Okay, in this case, we have 6 phases. Now, your release policy might have 4 phases or 8 phases, right? That's completely up to you. This release template is customizable. You could have multiple templates. As you see, we might have a minor release template. We might have an emergency break fix release template, right? But in this case, the major release template, we're going to show you, we have 6 phases. Each of those phases will have various tasks. Okay, so I can show you the tasks associated with the phase. Now, the difference between a task and a policy is simply this. Tasks are executed by people, right? These are manual steps. A task is either somebody gets assigned a task to do something, to check a box that they did it and now it's done, or it's an approval. An approval means that somebody has to approve or sign off on something. And the difference is with approvals, we could actually look up who that approver might be. We call these approval definitions. Okay, so for example, if we go back to the template here and we see in this task, the stakeholder is required, the product owner's approval is required. That actually is a record that will look up who the product owner is and send them that approval task. Okay, and when they get that task, they'll go ahead and approve it. Now, just to show you what these approval definitions look like. Okay, let's go back here to the approval definitions. Here's the approval for the product owner's manager. And we can see we start out with an approval source. This is the record that we have available to us during the release, and it's the digital product. And then from there, we can walk from the owner or from any of the other fields to the manager. And if we wanted to, we could even go up one level further to the manager's manager, right? And say, okay, now we want a higher level of approval. We want the manager's manager to do this approval, okay? So that would define that approver. And whenever that specific task was executed as part of a release, that person would get a notification. It could come through Teams, it could come through email, and it would say, hey, your approval is required for this task to be complete. Okay, so that's primarily what the release manager or the release admin is doing. The other thing they're doing is defining, and we'll go back to our template here, is they're defining policies. Now, policies are similar to tasks in that in order for the phase to be complete, they have to either get done or they have to show compliance, right? So, for example, these are policies that actually will query data in ServiceNow, in the data model, to make sure that certain things are done. It could be a legal sign-off. It could be that documentation was created. It could be that certain CIs were created in the CMDB, right? In this case, we have a lot of policies that are looking at the DevOps data model. So if you're not familiar with our DevOps change velocity solution, underpinning that is a data model that brings data from all the DevOps tools. I'm going to show you examples of that. So in this case, we want to make sure security scans are done. We want to make sure that unit testing is done, performance testing is done, integration testing is done. All of that's done in the development process, and that becomes a policy as part of the execution of a release, of a phase of a release. If this is the development policies, during the packaging phase, we have some other policies that we're checking. This is all automated, okay? The big difference between policies and tasks is the tasks are manual tasks executed by people, and the policies are automated queries to see if something was done in some other system or in the ServiceNow database. Now, it's very likely that you would start out with tasks in your release process that eventually turn into automated queries, right? So for example, I'll show you an example where unit testing is being signed off by an individual. I did the unit testing, I check a box, it's done. However, we can see based on the results of the actual build process in the DevOps tool, if it was actually done, and we could capture those results instead of having somebody sign off on it, we're getting the data live from the source, in this case, the actual testing tool in the pipeline. Okay, so that's the persona of a release admin, basically ensuring governance of a release. And now I'm going to show you what happens. How do we execute releases? How do we scope the releases? I'm going to impersonate our second user, Eileen. Okay, that's fine. And Eileen is responsible for a group of products. Okay, and here we see, you know, the state of different products. And from here, we could also see the approval tasks that are responsible, how many releases are in different stages, and how many policies we're waiting for compliance, right? Because we are exposing that data and propagating that data up to the dashboard, okay? Let's take a look at this one product, the April release, okay? So I'm gonna go and show you what that looks like from a product manager's perspective. These are the 3 products she's responsible for, and this is what she sees. Let's look at the product features. So in this case, the product features are actually being sourced from a project management tool, Jira, okay? So we're not creating the features and adding them to ServiceNow. We're actually tracking them in another product. That could be Jira, that could be our own SPM solution, right? If you're using SPM, you can track the work items there. It could be Azure DevOps boards. These work items link back to those projects. And if I was to open one of these, I would see the link, I could see the epic that it's tied to. I could click on this, and this takes me right into the Jira feature that's being tracked by the developers. So the developers stay in their tool. They manage the work items here. However, we are keeping track of it in ServiceNow. So we can see which features are going to be part of this release. This is very important for stakeholders, right? They want to know, hey, when is my bug going to be fixed? When is my new feature going to come out? This dashboard shows them which features are going to be part of which release. It also has a way for us to check off when a release is complete. And that's another policy we can do, is actually check for the completeness of these work items, okay? Now, these are the managing of the releases. You could actually, as a product owner, I could actually move things from the backlog into different releases. Okay, let's move this into the spring release, and that will realign the priority of that feature. So now it's part of the spring release instead of in the backlog. Okay, so that's one of the responsibilities of the release manager, is to make sure different features, the different releases are scoped properly. But normally this is not done in DPR. It's done inside of these project management tools, and we're just tracking it here. Okay, I hope that's clear. So the other thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to track releases. Now, for example, we have various patches coming out eventually. I could actually create a new release from any one of these. Seems like these all have releases created. Here we go. I can create a release. In this case, I would use the template that was created by Andrew, right? By Andrew Jackson. I can use that template to create a new release. And that means that that particular release would follow that template. Okay. So what you're going to see is here, all the releases that are being executed right now. I'm going to find, let's go back to the dashboard. I'm going to find the April pre-release here. And one thing you'll notice about, this is the execution of an actual release. One thing you'll notice is there's a lot of data about the release presented here. First, the release started back in February. We're expecting it to be, the final release target date is April 8th. Now that's important because by then we should have everything complete and be ready to deploy. We expect the deployment to end on the 20th of April, right? So there might be a rolling deployment to various, different environments and so on. We're going to track all those deployments with change records, and I'll show you that at the end. But in the meantime, what sticks out to me right now is my risk score is very high. Why is it very high? Well, if we drill into the release execution, we can see that some of my tasks are not complete, from the development phase. I'm in the user acceptance phase right now, at least that's where I should be. However, if we look at the tasks here, and let me go ahead and clear this filter, I see the unit testing has not been signed off on. If I drill into this, I see the unit testing is assigned to Coleman Cornelio, and Coleman should receive notification that they have to approve this task, okay? So if I was to go ahead and impersonate Coleman, we would look at their dashboard, and then they would have this task assigned to them, and it would be one of the things, this unit testing task, it even shows here as overdue. They would have to approve it, and then that would move it into the phase, and that would help complete the phase. Now, again, this task is not doesn't have to be manual, okay? It can, checking if a unit testing is complete is something we can do in an automated way. So let me go back to Eileen and show you that policy that can essentially do the same thing, okay? So what I mean by that is that policy can actually check the results of a build in a DevOps process and check the CC. Now we drop from high to medium because now that task is complete. So we're no longer at risk of missing our release date, okay? Let's go back to the release execution screen here and see that that task is, it should all be complete. All my tasks are complete. That's great. So now I'm in the user acceptance phase, but let me show you also the policies, right? Because I said that software policy compliance can be tested by actually tracking artifacts when they're being built. What you have now with DevOps is the continuous building of artifacts, and in some cases, the continuous deployment of those artifacts, meaning we're not waiting for the release to be complete to actually deploy things to production. This is a decoupling of actual deployments from releases that we can track as well, okay? So we have a lot of flexibility here. So let me go ahead and build a new artifact. We see number 122 was the last artifact, and we're actually tracking that here. We see that in the dashboard. If we go to the release artifacts, I can see we're always using the latest version to run our policy. If we drill into this, we can see all the different versions that were built. 122 is the last one. That corresponds to what's happening in my GitHub environment here. I'm going to go ahead and run another one. And what you'll see is when we run this build, we're going to now build 123. And if I've introduced any defects to this, those defects are going to actually keep this from being compliant, right? And I'm going to show you that now that it's no longer compliant, that compliance will be reflected in the results of this release execution phase. Okay, so the task would come back and show as non-compliant. Okay, while that's running, Kayla, are there any questions we could jump on in the meantime that you might want to bring up that are being asked in the feed here?
Yeah, I've been trying to answer many of them, but we can answer some live. I think this is one that I've seen a few times. What about now type releases where we want to track ServiceNow upgrades in DPR? Can we get release notes from docs and import them to DPR release? So I think the idea of supporting now releases in DPR.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you have, is any data that's in the platform becomes available to use in releases and in digital product release. And releases, especially like scoped application releases or releases to platform versions, if you have separate tasks and phases you need to track, that's fair game, including upgrading of the ServiceNow platform or upgrading of scoped applications or store applications and so on. That could all be tracked with the digital product release.
Another question from Anonymous is, does this address release notes? Is there a process for release notes to be consumed by end users?
So you can have a task in the background that would generate the release notes, right? So have your tasks laid out. One of the tasks could be generate the release notes, but it's not specifically within the scope of the digital product release to create the release notes, but it's something, it's definitely one of the line items we could track to make sure it gets done. Okay, so this build is just about complete. And now when it's complete, I'm going to show you that as we get a new artifact generated, we'll be able to track that and track the version of it. So we might have a pending version for that. Yeah, 123 shows up as pending right here. We're just waiting for it to complete the pipeline, and then it will show up as one of my artifact versions here. It should be the latest one at the top. Okay. And once it shows up, then we have the ability to then track the actual compliance of it under policies. Okay. So we are, we're linking the policies to the actual activities that are taking place in the pipeline. We're looking for vulnerabilities from security scans. We're looking for code coverage. We're looking for making sure all the stories are complete. And in this case, it would be complete in JIRA, right? All of that would make its policy, and that would mean we completed this phase. In the user acceptance testing phase, we would make sure that all the user tests passed. In many cases, these are done manually, right? So we don't have to rely on data just in the ServiceNow platform. Let's say they're checking off that things are approved in another system. The policies could actually externalize, those queries and bring that compliance or non-compliance into ServiceNow. Okay, so this should be complete. If we go back to our artifacts here, we should see we now have a new artifact. Let me refresh this. Number 123. There we go. Okay, so 123 now. Now, if I want to see, what happened in this artifact, if we scroll down, we can see there was actually a failed test here. One of the test results failed. That should now be reflected in my policies. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the policies. I'm going to rerun the policies. Now, policies will typically run once a day. You could run them more frequently. It's a batch job underneath that runs all the policies against your release. And but you could also run it manually right from here. And if it's and if you want to check the policies, if you refresh this, now it shows as non-compliant because that particular build 123 is has failed. Now it's not that the build failed, but it showed that one of the tests failed. So now that's why it's non-compliant. Okay. Now the next thing I wanted to show you, and this will be the last thing, is the integration with the change management. Right. So if we go back to that particular release. I mentioned that as things are being deployed, we are creating change records. And as you can see, we've already deployed several versions of this application, of this particular release to production. Even though not all of the features were met, this is called continuous deployment. When pipelines are actually deploying small changes incrementally to production, we still need to capture change records. And we could do that in a manual way. I can create a change manually and simply link it to the release, or I could run a pipeline, a deployment pipeline, and then using our DevOps change velocity solution, it will automatically create the change. So I'm going to go ahead and kick that off, and what's called this 0.9 well, 122 wasn't a good build. Hold on. 0.9.122 is the one I want, right? We're going to go ahead and run that. That wasn't a good build. So we'll go ahead and deploy that, and then we'll get a new change it looks like I hit it twice. Okay, that's fine. We'll get a new change. We'll get two new changes now for these deployments that are going, before they go to production and deploy, we'll get a change record for that. Okay. The other thing I could do is I could create a new change right from here. I could say, hey, let's create a new change. Let's create a DevOps change. I could even link DevOps data to it, right? I'm sure you've seen that, but we can go in here and say, okay, this is the FMR application, and this would just say manual release of manual change for deployment. We'll go ahead and save that. And then that change will also show up as linked to the release process right here. Okay. So you'll get automated changes, you'll get manual changes, and basically depending on how mature your implementation is, will determine what type of task or policy you use or what type of automated change you use. You can start out doing everything manual and then slowly migrate task by task to policies, for example. You could start out with manual changes, and then once you become more mature, you could implement automated changes using DevOps change policy. Okay, so that's pretty much all I had, Kaylin. And are there any more questions we can answer?
Yeah, I left a few that we can talk through.
Great.
So if someone makes an update in ServiceNow to one of those feature items and moves it to a release that is not, essentially they're asking if they make an update in DPR for a feature, will it get reflected in Jira?
Right now, no. The current behavior is really a one-way integration from Jira to ServiceNow. The only reason we allow folks to track features in ServiceNow is if they don't have that Jira integration set up, or if they don't have the SPM solution set up or Azure boards. If they want, they can manage features in the digital product release product, because it's an important capability. We provide it. But the goal is, if you're using Jira, then you stick with Jira to do those mappings, and it's a one-way integration. It won't change it in Jira.
One other question is about seeing the release calendar view. Could you show
Yes,
that?
the release calendar. So that is, let me go back to Andrew. So the release calendar right now is about tracking release ready dates and readiness target dates for various releases. So let's see here. So this doesn't have, let me see if I have it. Let me go back to Eileen. She should have her releases on her calendar. Nope, she doesn't have it. Readiness target right here. Okay, there we go. Yeah, these are the dates that we expect the releases to be ready by. Obviously, there's going to be more coming in the calendar, so you'll be able to see basically the durations of releases and the more details about what's happening from month to month with the various releases.
We're also planning on this calendar view to bring in blackout and maintenance windows and holidays. That's on our roadmap for an upcoming release.
Yeah,
but not available at GA. All right, another question. What is best practice to incorporate security patching to existing applications systems into release management?
Yeah, so patching an application is another release process, right? It's another type of, it's probably a different template because you're not introducing new features, you're just fixing bugs. The testing is going to be different. You're going to have, maybe like a minor release template with fewer phases and fewer tasks involved. But it's there's no reason why you couldn't use release management for tracking the patching and small incremental releases.
Could you show and talk about the relationship between the digital product record table, I'm assuming, and this release workflow functionality?
Okay, the digital product record is the record of the product, and the question is to show the relationship between the product record and, well, a product can have versions, and then versions can have releases. That's the relationship that I'm aware of. Is I don't know if there's somebody else on the call that can give a more detailed answer.
Yeah, I think this is probably one that would be good to have Colin respond to. So Jay, what we'll do is I'll save this question for Colin. He can give you the deep intricacies about how the tables are connected and works, and we'll share that with you after. One other question from Jack is, what if I create a hardware release template? So at GA, digital product release, the name kind of says it, but it's meant to focus on software product releases. So we don't support hardware product releases. You could theoretically, I guess, create a template and make it fit for a hardware release, but the experience that we've designed has been centered around software product releases.
Yeah, really, the labeling of the fields and things just wouldn't match up
Yeah.
today for hardware. I mean, if you wanted to, you can change the labeling, but it's customization that we wouldn't encourage, I think. Yeah.
Jeremiah, are release phases visible on user stories and epics out of the box? I'm not sure I'm clear what this means.
Our release phase is visible. So the user stories and epics, if you're looking at it in Jira, for example, no, you wouldn't see. If you're looking at the user stories and epics, you wouldn't see that. I think that's the type of enhancement we would do for SPM, right? When we work on, we have some plans for a better together story with DPR and SPM, and understanding when you have a work item in SPM, what phase of a release it's part of, or where it is in the release process, you would definitely want to have that information on the work item. We don't provide integration back into Jira today. It's a one-way integration right now. So you would have to go into ServiceNow to see where that work item is. Good question, though. Yeah, I can see that being useful.
One asked, are there KPI or dashboards out of the box for DPR to see how you're doing for a release process?
So I believe that's coming in the May release. A more,
I think so, yeah.
A richer set of data propagated up to the dashboard to show release, deployment frequencies and those kind of things. Yeah.
And I know we're also planning to surface DevOps insights in DPR. That's probably a little bit further out than the quality dashboard that's coming out in May, but it's another dashboard that we're bringing to DPR that exists in DevOps change velocity too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that data exists on the DevOps change, and if you have it, if you have the data in the platform, we are surfacing it in some other tools. Yeah.
All right. For release blackout periods, those will be shared with the existing feature with the change model. So I'm thinking it's asking for blackouts that'll be surfaced in the release calendar. Is that similar to what we use for change? The answer to that is I believe so. We're investigating currently how to pull those things in, but I would assume what we've done for a lot of the other features is work off a lot of the capabilities that other products within ITSM use, and I would assume we would use what change uses for blackout periods. Will it detect any scheduling conflicts? At GA, no. There's some logic in there to prevent you, I think, from scheduling the same release on the same day potentially. But at this point, I don't think like scheduling conflicts in terms of blackout windows, maintenance windows, and things like that. Not yet. That's something that
the only place that capability would exist is in that change record, right? Because the change has a conflict calendar, and if you had two changes deploying at the same time, that would show as a conflict. If it's two changes for the same like application service or CI, that would show as a conflict.
Okay.
Is there there's a question about ITSM Pro. Yeah, so this is part of the ITSM Pro license. If you're entitled to if you have the ITSM Pro entitlement, you're entitled to digital product release. Another question, I suppose the product can be mapped to a CI, as in release management. Am I right? Yes. You can map products to CI. The idea is that you'll also map the releases to software models, right? So there's really two links to the CMDB that way. Right?
One question from Jonah is there a Gantt chart view available for releases? I don't believe so yet, but
Not yet.
yeah, that's something that I think we are looking into as we begin to look to manage dependent releases and hierarchical releases, but that's coming in future releases or like a future release for this product.
Okay, so any
How about
solution for providing a way to handle phased hardware rollouts across thousands of locations, possibly through a different product. Okay. Yeah, so these, what you saw here were phases that included tasks and policies. If you had the data of the status of those thousands of locations somewhere else, then they could roll up to a policy, I suppose. But that would be some work on the other end to make sure that data is available. And that's how we do it. There's nothing that I'm aware of in ServiceNow can track hardware rollouts at that scale. Right? What else do we have, Kaylin? Any more questions? I see actually there are quite a few still coming in.
Yeah. One from Atul. How can we create a new product in the CMDB, or do we have some option in DPR? How we do it in DPR is you can request creating a new product. I think Joe might have showed that experience. It leverages a service catalog flow that you can modify to request a new product. And then that would be put into your CMDB if approved. But by default, out of the box, it's an auto-approve flow.
And this, I don't have the description. So this would be just the creation of a new product. This will actually create the product in the CMDB as well. And basically what we're doing is we're requesting it and approving it through that catalog workflow. You could add approval steps to that workflow. If you don't want it to be that quick and easy to do, you could make it so that there is some approvals in that workflow so that it's not getting out of control when new products getting created. And you explain the impact or benefit of CAB meetings with regards to automated change requests. Okay, that's really a DevOps change velocity question, but the idea is that if you are doing automated change requests, and if you want to take a look at a change velocity demonstration, you can also do automated change approvals, right? So that's one of the features of change management is these change approval policies. So if you're going to set up automated change and automated change approvals, the idea is the CAB is not approving the actual change. However, the CAB is reviewing those change approval policies. And that's what they focus on, is to make sure that all the changes that are being automated into production are following a set of policies. So, all these changes are coming through quick and incrementally, and you're going to get a lot more changes with DevOps, right? So the change approval board has sort of a different role in that. Instead of approving individual changes, just making sure the policies match the governance requirements. Okay. All right.
Maybe one or two more. I want to, in our last 5 minutes, make sure we get to our final poll questions before we wrap up.
Okay, yeah, why don't we do that now, because I think we're just about out of time.
Okay. Let me steal the screen real quick.
Any questions we didn't answer, we should be able to capture who asked it, and we can reply directly.
Yeah, we'll plan on getting those answers to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so final two polls. First is, are you planning or were you planning to use ServiceNow for release management? Yes, you do use, or you've been looking into release management too. Yes, after this presentation, DPR seems like a suitable, interesting solution. Or no, we're going to continue using our current processes, or undecided. And then the second question, this is open-ended. are there any resources that would be helpful to you to take the next step in deploying DPR, what those are, and will just help us understand what we have, if it meets your needs, and we can help use that to prioritize. So give this another maybe 20 seconds for y'all to answer, and then we'll go to our final poll. Okay, actually, can you launch two polls at once, or do we have to close this one before the next one?
I think you have to close this one. Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll give another 10 seconds.
Yeah, let's.
Okay, and this one. All right, could you launch the last poll, Greg? And our final poll is kind of looking at future sessions for DPR. One, we're planning to have a launch and learn session, which is like a deep dive learning series. If you're interested in that, please let us know. If you are interested, we'll ask you for your email. And then topics for future sessions. We have a couple that we have in mind, but love to hear from you. Deep dive into better together use cases with DPR. So things like modern change, informed root cause analysis, integrated risk, maybe a foundational implementation workshop where we walk through some of the foundational use cases and how to get DPR set up. And third, I think always a popular session is a product roadmap session. So looking at our next several releases, what we have on our roadmap, giving you insight into what we're planning and also getting your feedback on that so we can help make sure we're building the right things. And if you have any other thoughts, please let us know. I'm gonna leave that poll, and go to our final slide, which is a call to action. So DPR is available as of Washington, March 20th. We went GA. Please start experimenting with DPR in your subprod environments. Let us know what you think. Second, we recently launched our digital product release community site. We'll make sure to send that out to all of you after this, so you have the direct link to it. But we have some helpful info there, so like getting started guides, implementation and usage guides, as well as FAQs that we've heard from some of the customers we've worked with over time. They put into the FAQ. Please reference that, see if it helps you get started with DPR, answers your questions. And if it doesn't, don't be shy and engage with us on community. Leave responses to those articles. Let us know what's missing, what's still confusing, or if you have any general questions on the forums, we'll be monitoring that and responding as quickly as we can. But in general, looking to get your feedback and get your hands-on experience with DPR, and we're here to help. Okay. Well, Greg, do we want to end it here, or do we want to maybe?
Yeah, it looks like the poll has slowed down, so I think I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and then we can end the session.
All right, great. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. Hope you have a great rest of your day, or if it's the end of your day, great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.